History repeats. The deception of money and trust. Every empire claims that its money is safe. Every government insists that its promises will last forever. Yet history proves them wrong every time. From Rome to France, from the Confederacy to modern Lebanon, people wake up one morning to find their savings worthless, their salaries meaningless, and their futures stolen by the systems they thought were reliable. Collapse is not rare. Collapse is the rule. The real question is not whether financial systems will fail, but how you protect yourself when they do. The most dangerous financial mistake is believing the system is permanent. We assume everything in our bank accounts is secure, but money is not secure. Money is trust, and trust can vanish overnight. That is why history is both ruthless and instructive. Every collapse leaves lessons, patterns, and warnings, showing what truly preserves wealth and what turns to dust. If you pay attention, those who survive disasters are not the most trusting, but the ones who doubted first. Lessons from Catastrophes, Gold, Land, and Liquidity. Let's examine the Byzantine Empire. It is remembered as the eastern half that survived 1,000 years after the fall of Western Rome. At the center of its economy was the gold solidus, a coin so trusted that merchants across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia accepted it without question. For centuries, it was the closest thing the medieval world had to a global reserve currency. But here's the remarkable point. They should have learned from the disasters Rome faced with its silver denarius. Emperors continually debased it, turning it almost into tin-plated silver. Centuries later, the Byzantines made the same mistake with gold. They began reducing purity, mixing cheaper alloys. At first no one noticed, then trust cracked. The coin that sustained Mediterranean trade became merely a political fiction. Its devaluation destroyed the stability the Byzantine economy once had. So what survived? Paper promises, government orders, number. Traders who quietly hoarded real gold or lands beyond the empire's reach preserved their wealth. Everyone else's money evaporated. Here is the first timeless lesson. Governments cannot resist the temptation to debase currency, and when they do, real value flees to assets that cannot be imitated. But not every collapse comes from governments' monetary mistakes. Sometimes it is sudden shocks. In the mid-14th century, Europe faced its most devastating pandemic, the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1351, half of Europeans perished. Cities emptied, villages vanished, trade routes collapsed. Yet plague economics was not only disaster. With half the workforce gone, labor became valuable. Survivors could demand higher wages. Food and land, once scarce, became relatively abundant compared to people. Families with cash or valuable assets, silver, goods, or work skills, gained unprecedented power. Land that had been expensive could now be bought cheaply. Houses were empty, fields untended. Survivors faced a full buyer's market. If this sounds familiar, don't be surprised. We saw a modern example during the COVID pandemic. Supply chains broke down, governments printed trillions, and those with assets acquired property, while wage earners fell behind. Housing prices soared, stock markets recovered rapidly, millions struggled to pay rent. The lesson is clear: pandemics redistribute wealth. Survivors of the Black Death climbed the social ladder by leveraging scarce resources. During COVID, those with cash acquired real estate, stocks, and businesses that others couldn't hold. Crises reward those with reserves and punish those without. The fragility of institutions and paper money. While pandemics show how fast economies can change, the banking collapse in Renaissance Florence offers another lesson. Even seemingly huge institutions can fall like dominoes. In the 1340s, Florence was Europe's financial capital, home to powerful banking families like the Bardi and Peruzzi. These families lent massive sums to kings. The biggest disaster struck when England's King Edward III defaulted on huge loans during the war with France. When Edward stopped paying, the banks collapsed. Depositors were ruined, trade froze. Ordinary citizens learned a painful lesson. Size is not security. Fame does not protect. Institutions exist for profit, not your safety. When they fail, they take your savings too. This lesson repeated across centuries, from Florence to Lehman Brothers in 2008, to Lebanese banks freezing accounts. Survivors realized that promises are only valid as long as the system stands. The American Civil War is remembered for battles, politics, and the abolition of slavery. But behind the weapons and speeches, there was a ruthless financial war that most Americans barely understood. Both the Union and the Confederacy realized that a war of this scale required printing money. In the North, the government issued greenbacks, paper money backed not by gold, but solely by the promise of the United States. Initially, they seemed bold and patriotic, but as greenbacks entered the economy, their value fell. Inflation eroded worth. Trust declined. In the South, the situation was worse. The Confederacy printed graybacks in massive amounts. By war's end, Confederate inflation reached staggering levels. Prices rose thousands of percent and salaries became nearly worthless. Soldiers' pay was devalued before it could be spent. Families carried sacks of money. Buying bread was nearly impossible. By 1865, Confederate currency was not just weak, it was dead. What mattered was not paper promises, but tangible assets, land, food, gold, everything that held real value. Lifelong savings turned to dust. Opportunists acquired wealth at fire sale prices. The lesson: your country may have already experienced a currency collapse. Protection comes not from trusting paper, but from owning value the system cannot print. France offers another painful example. In the 1790s, revolutionaries overthrew the monarchy, seized church lands, and issued assignats, paper money theoretically backed by confiscated property. But the government printed uncontrollably. Each new issue devalued the last. Prices soared, wages lagged, assignats became worthless. Farmers refused paper, demanding goods or silver. Bread riots returned to Paris. The revolution devoured itself. Winners were not holders of paper, but holders of food, gold, or property. Promises are only as valuable as others accept them. When trust collapses, savings do not shrink, they vanish. 2 centuries later, in 1997, a speculative attack on the Thai baht became a regional crisis. Thailand borrowed dollars, trusting its fixed exchange rate. When it collapsed, foreign debts couldn't be paid. Investors fled. Southeast Asian currencies fell in a domino effect. Economies shrank, unemployment rose, governments sought IMF aid. Those most harmed were ordinary citizens who lost savings and saw mortgages double. Those with foreign currency or assets fared better. Borrowing in someone else's money is a deadly trap. When the storm hits, the borrower drowns, not the lender. Now the picture is clear. Revolutionary France, Civil War America, or modern Asia, it is the same pattern. Paper money collapses. Debt chains nations and families. Survivors are not the most trusting, but the ones who spotted fragility early. Surviving collapse. Preparedness wins. Collapse is not just history. Between 2019 and 2021, Lebanese banks locked their doors. Deposits froze, withdrawals were limited, money collapsed. A lifetime of savings became pocket change. Middle-class families, retirees, doctors, engineers, anyone who trusted the system was wiped out. Survivors diversified money abroad, owned gold or property, or kept cash outside banks. Others fell into the trap. Is it distant? In 2008, homes in the U.S. were foreclosed, retirement funds collapsed, and the banks causing the crisis were bailed out. In 2020, during the pandemic, trillions were printed. Asset prices rose for the wealthy, while wages stayed flat. In 2023, some U.S. regional banks nearly collapsed overnight. Trust disappeared. Too big to fail is a myth until the doors close. So, how do you protect yourself? History offers no single answer. Byzantium, gold. Post-Black Death, liquidity to buy abandoned land. Florence, don't trust too big to fail, banks. Confederacy, tangible assets. France, food and property. Asia, avoid foreign currency debt. Lebanon, exit banks early. Patterns shift, but the theme is the same. Survival comes not from blind trust in paper or institutions, but from recognizing real value when illusions collapse. Paradox. Collapse is both tragedy and opportunity. For the unprepared, disaster. For the prepared, a chance to acquire assets the system cannot print at a bargain. After the Black Death, peasants gained land. In 2008, cash holders bought homes, millions were foreclosed. Protection is not just defense, it is seizing opportunities forced upon the vulnerable. But wealth is not only what you own, what you can do matters too. Survivors were not only gold or property holders, they were those who could act when others could not. Bakers who provided bread, mechanics who repaired vehicles, farmers who fed communities, traders crossing borders. These people not only survived, they thrived during crises. Every crisis strips money of meaning, but production never disappears. People still eat, build, trade, and meet life's needs. Those who can provide this do not stay poor for long. Deep protection comes from real assets, real skills, and the awareness that illusions always collapse. Every crisis is a transfer, from the overly trusting to the prepared, from paper promises to tangible value, from passive savers to active producers. History shows this pattern again and again. The question is, will everything collapse? Yes, it will. But the real question is, will you be among the ones holding promises,